better rolling dice. You never know if it could change your life. Take a chance, you need the wrong or right.
Bye, gases. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dungeon Master of None. I'm Dungeon Master Rob.
And I'm Dungeon Master Matt, and today, finally, we are here to review for you the newest edition of King's Throne, Game of Lust.
That's right. This is now an all mobile gaming podcast. We are big into a Clash of Kings, a Clash Royale.
You can build your own maiden, Rob.
Fire Age Game of War, Game of War Fire Age, Fire War Game of Age, and all variations thereof.
Mm-hmm.
We love it when we see ads that have a generic hot fantasy woman on them, and it says, "Oh, my king,
Yes.
come and save us." Or
will you be able to please your maiden?
Yeah, build your kingdom. Anyway, yeah. So we'll be talking. No, we're not talking about that. Though, I would love. Actually, the less that I think about those things, maybe is the better.
We're in a dark world, Rob.
We live in a grim time. You ever think about how much
fantasy we love is turned into? I don't know. I'm sure there are coders writing these games shackled to their computers.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. How
place.
many programmers, how many people, how much money is there in this making these basically casino games with a fantasy
that say, "Oh my lord,"
like a fantasy sheen upon them.
There's more people that worked on King's Throne, Game of Lust than all of Dungeons and Dragons
almost
for
certainly
all time.
I don't even want to know. Supercell. I mean, how much money did it make? Let's find out.
Okay,
$1 billion.
Supercell has a market capitalization
$6.4 billion. So we don't know how much Wizards' operating revenue is, or how many copies.
It's not that.
It is not that. It is well below $1 billion. It is in the, if we're lucky, hundreds of millions of dollars range. Our beloved hobby, which we spend hours and hours every week talking about and writing and designing, is small fucking fry. It could be snuffed out in a moment by Supercell should they decide to do so. And that is the wonderful world that we live in.
I mean, we
anyway,
could just sell out, Rob. I mean, we could easily make the next King's Throne, Game of Lust.
I'll tell you what I love about this, though, is it tells me that that they haven't figured out any way to successfully monetize this hobby, in a way that is, enough to get any big company on board. Otherwise, Wizards would have been, subsumed by some. I mean, it already belongs to Hasbro, but it would have been, even then, swallowed under by some other megacorp. So that's good, I guess. I don't know. At some point, this will become popular enough that we will all be, shoved into the gaping maw of Amazon Tabletop Edition or something like that.
Right. Where all your character sheets have to be on the cloud, and you got to press the premium button if you want a full description of your spells.
You can, premium content in the form of one session, buyable magic items like the fucking Hunger Games. You can just get a potion airdropped into your session by clicking the loot box button on your Amazon Dungeon cloud platform. All right, well, now that we've made ourselves good and depressed, let's go back to what we were actually talking about, which is
Happy
Eberron.
Happy Eberron Day.
Happy Eberron.
The most joyous day of the year.
That's right. So what have we got here, Matt? What's the thing?
So today we're reviewing Eberron Rising from the Last War, the official hardcover Eberron book for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons by Jeremy Crawford, James Wyatt, and the man himself, Keith Baker.
That's right. This is the long awaited and anticipated 5th edition update to Eberron, which for a long time we were not sure was actually going to happen, but seems like it has been in the works, and it is at long last here, folks.
It's been an up and down journey. If longtime listeners will remember when we started this podcast, over a year ago, we were like, "Hey, they should make an Eberron
coming up on
book."
2 years ago, Matt.
2 years ago,
pretty soon.
2 years ago, we were like, they should make Eberron for 5th edition or any of their other campaign settings. Please stop whatever you're doing, Wizards. And then they made an Eberron book, but it was digital only, and it kind of wasn't very much. And then we thought that was all we were going to get.
Yeah, that was weird. It was cheap. It was small. It wasn't bad, but it was also just, what is this? And they've been toying with the Artificer for a long time, and very, very early on, we got a UA with some Eberron-related stuff in it. Back then, Artificer was a wizard subclass. We've been through the ringer with Eberron. A long and winding
strange journey. It's like
here.
We got on a lightning rail, elemental
in
airship,
Zilargo, and we're just now getting off in Sharn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, the City of Towers awaits, Rob. So I guess we should talk. What is this book for people who are, I guess, a little in the dark?
Well, if you're familiar with Eberron already, this is basically the Eberron campaign setting book redone for 5th edition. If you're not familiar with that, then this is, I guess the closest analog is like a supercharged Sword Coast Adventures, because it's got some mechanics, but it's got a lot of setting and background. This basically gives you everything that you need to build an Eberron adventure, an Eberron campaign, which is its intent. It does not include, you still need the player's handbook, you still need the Dungeon Master's Guide, you still need the monster manual, but everything that you need to know about Eberron is in this book.
I was trying to decide, Rob, whether this book was more player-friendly or more Dungeon Master-friendly, and I honestly couldn't make a decision, because while there isn't huge detailed descriptions of every single region in this campaign world or something like that, there are so many interesting hooks that could work for a Dungeon Master trying to write a campaign or a player trying to come up with a background for their character. I guess I'm trying to say is that almost everything in here is usable by both players and Dungeon Masters. I don't know if that was the design, but it works out really nice.
Well, the way that Eberron has always been is that they have never produced full campaigns or full adventures for Eberron. They give you just an unbelievably rich world of hooks and settings and characters and ideas, and let you go from there. It is the campaign setting for DMs that want some ideas but generally want to build their own homebrew campaigns. And similarly, it's also great for players who want to create unique and interesting and deep characters with lots of background and story hooks themselves. So what Matt's saying is absolutely right. You can go through and read all of these different, about the regions, about the faiths, about all of the different elements that come together in an Eberron campaign, and build a very robust and interesting character with lots of rich backstory, which is emphasized in an Eberron style game.
Well, what you're gonna get more basically in terms of chapters is an introduction to the world, a great chapter on character creation in which you're going to find a bunch of new species, the Artificer class, and an intriguing idea for group character creation, the group patron, which we'll talk about soon, a gazetteer of the world of Eberron focusing on plot hooks, a more detailed chapter about the campaign setting's most interesting city, Sharn, and then a chapter of advice for building Eberron adventures that contains a lot of information about some of the main antagonists that your players might face, and a short chapter of magic items, and a short bestiary, and finally a sample adventure.
And this is classic Eberron style. The original campaign setting had much of this, including a brief adventure to get you started. But to be clear, as a dungeon master, you will need to build your own actual, like, full-on campaign. You are given all of the tools that you need to do so, but the adventure only takes your players so far. And so you're going to have to design from there. With that in mind, you are set up for success by this book, but it does not include like a full adventure.
Yeah.
It is not a Curse of Strahd. That is not a, Storm King's whatever. It is its own campaign book.
Before we dive into the details, Rob, what would you say to people who are either, if you're interested in Eberron at all, right, you should get this book.
Yes.
But if you're not, if you run games in your own homebrew setting or in Forgotten Realms, would you advise players or dungeon masters to get this book? Is there anything of value here for those types of folks?
I would say tentatively yes, because it is a very well written and well designed book, and there are tons of ideas that you can borrow. However, it is a full-on book, and if you aren't running in an Eberron-style setting, it's not as easy to pick and choose from. So, unlike, say, Ghosts of Saltmarsh or Tales of the Yawning Portal, which you can easily pick pieces out of and borrow from and, insert into your own campaign, Eberron is full of wonderful ideas, but they are pretty tied to the setting, so it might not be as easy to just borrow if you already have your own homebrew setting. That being said, if you are running a steampunk or magitech or, high magic campaign, it will be a lot easier, and you would get a lot out of this. Borrowing an artificer or a wand slinger or any of the various high magic NPCs or items or ideas would be very easy. So if that's your kind of campaign and you're looking for a little bit of like stat or idea bolstering, this is definitely something you should look into.
Absolutely. So Rob, shall we jump into some of the details of this book and talk about what we like and what we don't like? That kind of thing?
Let's get to it.
Okay. The first chapter, the first meaty chapter is on character creation. And oh boy, there's a lot here. This is the first new class for 5th edition officially published in the history of 5th edition. It's been 5 years.
That's true.
There's the Artificer.
It's
and then,
the
of course,
Artificer.
a ton of new races. Where do you want to start?
I wonder. So, is the Artificer now official? Is
Yes.
it something that you can play in
Yes.
Adventure League if you wanted to? Oh, interesting.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about some of these things in order. And Skippy, we've got both new races and old races with new flavor. The first is the Changelings. Changelings are stat-wise pretty much unchanged from their Unearthed Arcana version. However, the description of changelings given in this Eberron book is super great. It adds in a little bit of the changeling lore that appeared in the Races of Eberron 3.5 supplemental, talking about how changelings view the fact that, hey, they can look like anyone, so they might have these personas that they pass among themselves. It's all very cool.
It is very cool. And changelings are very neat. They've got, obviously, a innate ability to change form and shape, which is obviously pretty powerful in the right context, but otherwise not like game breaking.
One thing they've done in the lore that is new for this book is that previous editions and books had talked about changelings as the result of breeding between humans and doppelgangers. And they flipped that around. I think it makes the background of the race, if your campaign was going to get into this, much more interesting in that changelings are perhaps an original, species of Eberron, and that doppelgangers were created by evil forces from changelings.
Interesting. It talks a bit about how changelings just sort of adopt a shape as a mask, right? And I think it's a really interesting idea about how changelings might approach, like some creature that can change shape at will might approach their outward appearance. And I think that this is one of the more interesting things about changelings, and I think that they put some thought into this is really interesting. So you could create a very, very interesting character with multiple personas that they adopt as they go through the adventuring day. And I can also see how this would be a huge pain in the ass, but I also like this idea, like that they've put some thought into how such an adventurer, how such a person might behave. And
this is thought that I think this race has deepened in the over 10 years since Eberron's publication, in that they have actually, over many books and articles, really thought through how a changeling community and culture might work. The next race is they talk briefly about the Dragonborn. I don't think the Dragonborn fit in very well with some of the established stuff, and they didn't put much effort into this. I was not impressed with it.
Dragonborn make very little sense in Eberron, but they tried. So, yeah.
However, if you remember our review of Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, or our original review, Rob, of talking about the campaign setting of Eberron, one of your critiques was that dwarves of all the established races were the least interesting. They've changed dwarves.
They have.
And what do you think of it?
I like the dwarves a lot. And so this dwarf image here is I love it. Well, it's a dwarf with a mustache and like a vest and shirt sleeves and a tentacle whip. And so
he looks like a hipster dwarf badass, with a tentacle whip.
Which is
Why
actually
not?
how
great.
I designed my dwarves in my Eberron campaign, because they're related. They're financiers, they're business people. The Aurum is mostly run by them, so like I had them be
well dressed.
80s
wealthy, stockbroker types.
Yeah, stockbroker types, exactly. And
there are two types of people in this world, Rob. There are sheep and there are boulets. Are you a boulet or a sheep? Are you gonna make that platinum or not?
Yeah. Listen, the platinum is for closers, Matt.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you know what it takes to sell glyphs of warding in this world? Takes electrum fucking balls.
So this is how I always imagined them, just like based on their position within the world, and I love that this is the sort of like thematic idea they've gone with.
And they've added tentacles to them,
and also they have tentacles.
So the dwarfs, which were again maybe a little less flavorful in previous editions of Eberron, they've added this conflict that the dwarves are fighting with these flesh warping madness creatures known as the Dalkir, and that some dwarves believe these abominations must be destroyed, but some are okay with taking the weapons of the enemy to enhance themselves to fight them. Others are not, and so you will find many dwarf warlocks, right? If they are like, oh, we need a warlock species in Eberron, it's actually the dwarves, and that's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. So yeah, I really like the way that they've gone with dwarves. No, I'm glad you asked me that, because I was delighted because this is what I thought made most sense for them, because of the glyph of warding means that they have the banking industry. Banking means that they're heads of the Aurum. They've got an interesting relationship to Kyber and the underworld. Yeah, it's great.
The only other major change I noticed in this book regarding the various species is that unlike Wayfinder's Guide, different sub-races, for example, wood elves and high elves, are delineated to actual regions of the world as opposed to player preference. I sort of don't like that, but that's okay. I will survive. And then I noticed that the Warforged race was completely reworked.
Yeah, so elves are interesting. I like the theme that they have these images of the Arini elf, the high elf, and the Terendal, the wood elf, and they're distinctly different in how they look and are styled, which is neat. I also, like Matt, don't love that you can't be a Arini wood elf or a Terendali high elf, but whatever, it's fine.
Nothing would stop you.
It's not a big deal. There's also a new. Is this a new feat? The Revenant Blade, or was that
no?
It
is
before?
Not. That was there before. The one thing that is radically changed is so they were successful in rewriting the dwarfs to really make them kick. But I don't think the tieflings, or as we mentioned before, Dragonborn are really integrated into the setting in a new way, and this was a really great opportunity to do that. I also noticed, Rob, that the Warforged race, which if you had the previous Unearthed Arcana or Wayfinder's Guide, is reworked to remove its sub-races.
I want to talk to you about the Warforged, but there's two things I want to talk about first.
Sure.
So, gnomes, halflings, humans, half-elves, mostly the same, totally well situated within Eberron, nothing wild here. In terms of character creation, however, and throughout this entire book, this is one of my favorite things, goblinoids have been greatly, vastly expanded. So there are now stats for bugbears, goblins, and hobgoblins, if you wanted to create one of those characters. And there's deep, rich lore for why you would want to be one of those races and how it would fit in Eberron.
That is, so two things are new here, right? The stats for bugbears and goblins are the same. There is a new set of stats for orcs that is different than the stats presented in Volo's Guide to Monsters, but the most useful thing is exactly what Rob said, which is it actually gives you some really compelling reasons to be these races.
So sorry, Matt's right. These aren't new, but they have been.
Except for the orcs. The orc is new, and the orc stats in Volos were incredibly punishing. I think it was the only race that had a stat penalty, and they fixed that, and I love it.
So, and one of my favorite things about Eberron is that being an orc or a goblinoid makes sense and doesn't condemn you to being a savage or evil creature. And these are just excellent stats, excellent background. So if you ever wanted to make an orc, half-orc, goblin character, this is a great campaign for it.
Absolutely.
Kalash, Tar, and Shifters are the same from the Wayfinder's Guide, right? Nothing has changed, I don't think.
I don't want to get us distracted here, but
we're gonna get to Warforged. Last thing I want to say.
No. I don't want to get us distracted here. But if you on the art on page 25, there is a picture of the three goblinoid races: hobgoblins, bugbears, and goblins. There's also in this art flintlock pistols drawn. Which
I don't know what you're talking about, Matt. I have not.
Rob apparently cannot see it. I am, however,
it looks
cursed.
fine to me. Is this repurposed from somewhere, Matt?
I think it's gotta be.
Yeah.
It's gotta be.
Lazy wizards. We know for a fact that there's no gunpowder for very good reasons in Eberron. Yeah.
It is described elsewhere, right? There's the idea of wand slingers or arcane firearms, which I don't know why they would call them firearms. If they're arcane, they don't fire, they shoot spells. But they're described as basically wands or rods with crystals on the end, and here in one of the art, it just shows a flintlock pistol, which is disappointing. It's lazy. So, there's a couple editing mistakes in this chapter as well. It says humans in one spot cannot manifest the mark of finding, and then in another spot it says they can. Yeah, there's some editing problems with this book.
It's not... Okay. I mean, okay, so it's worth mentioning that I noticed some too, and it's not uncommon, but this one seems like a little sloppy. Do better, wizards. Well, okay. So I want to, real quick though, I agree with you about tieflings and dragonborn. I know why they included them. I'm a little frustrated because they put so much effort into all the other races, and I don't know why. They could have tried harder. Why? They seem like an afterthought. I don't know why they had to do that.
The thing that's frustrating, and the only reason I would remark upon it, is because they clearly went back to the drawing board and said, man, halflings are so cool in Eberron, right? They have all these mercantile houses that control hospitality and healing, and the wild halflings of the plains ride dinosaurs, and they have crime families. It's so cool. The gnomes have all these neat things about their culture of intrigue, and the elves with their sort of two opposing cultures. And we noticed dwarves are not as interesting, and we reworked them to make them just as interesting, yet we didn't do that with tieflings and dragonborn.
And I guess it's a problem because they can't manifest dragon marks, but that in and of itself is a potentially interesting, I don't know, that can be worked into the world. Anyway, whatever.
Right.
Let's talk about Warforged real quick.
In previous books, Warforged had 3 sub-races that allowed you to kind of be like a fighter, a scout, or a jack of all trades, an envoy. They've gotten rid of those. They've simplified it, which I like. I sort of missed the kind of envoy Warforged who could have an integrated tool in their body. The new Warforged can wear armor, which sort of thematically goes against some of the descriptions, but in play it's probably more simple.
I liked the way that they described it, and it made sense, which was just that you're essentially like grafting it on, which, sure, that works.
That's fine.
It's just simpler. And as much as like thematically I might not love it, I'm increasingly a big fan of things that make it simpler. Warforged are also a really good generalist race. Like I think they compete with humans for like any type of character because their base ability score increases Constitution, which everybody needs, and then any other ability score of their choice, and they get a free skill proficiency and a free tool proficiency. That
and
fucking
a free
rules.
bonus to armor class.
Yeah, I really like the new Warforged. I think they're awesome. A little less like unique, but I think that you have a lot more options for building your own Warforged adventurer character. I think you've been given a more powerful blank slate to work with. So I think that's probably good in the long run.
Absolutely. And then, as we've talked about before, in Eberron 5th edition, dragon marks, which are magical sigil tattoos that certain bloodlines carry and are also associated with giant monopolist mercantile houses that control commerce and magic throughout the continent, are presented as subraces. And for 5th edition, that works pretty well. So you have 12 different dragon marks to choose from, which can be added to 12 different races. Or sorry, not 12 different races, but basically all the core races minus tieflings and dragonborn.
I still think that maybe the best way... I sort of disagree. I think maybe the best way to model a dragon mark is to have it use your ability score improvement, over time or something like that. But this is a pretty elegant solution. This is good. Having it replace your subrace or be a variant subrace works pretty well. It just sort of closes out the possibility of you manifesting a dragon mark later in life.
You've sacrificed that play opportunity or the opportunity for your dragon mark to get bigger.
But that's okay. This is a good solution. It's a compromise. I will call it that works. And this is the same as it was in Wayfinder's Guide, but it's good. I like it.
The one thing that's different is that you get bonus spells if you are a spellcaster for this race, right? So, for example, if you're a human with the Mark of Making, you get, a cantrip and one spell once a day. But if you have a spellcasting or pact magic feature, you get to add spells associated with your dragon mark. So, for example, if you're a halfling with the Mark of Hospitality, you get to add sleep, aid, calm emotions, create food and water, etc., to whatever your spell list is, be it paladin, cleric, ranger, wizard, warlock, etc.
That makes these a lot more appealing, I think. I still think they're pretty, even without that, pretty compelling sub-races and variant.
I had some questions about this at first because I was like, well, if you're a fighter who happens to have the Mark of the Sentinel, you're basically giving up those bonus spells. But then I was like, oh, wait. In 5th edition, every single class can get a spellcasting ability. So if you're a fighter with the Mark of the Sentinel, you should probably be an Eldritch Knight. And then you can say, my magic comes through my dragon mark.
Which is a cool way to explain, you're not just like a casty fighter, right? Your magic comes from your dragon mark.
No, the dragon marks, it's a compromise, but the idea of dragon marks are just so cool. And I mean,
very, very cool.
This basically means that this book adds 5 plus 12, like 17 new character race options for your players, which is crazy.
It is crazy.
There's one new background, which is a house agent. So if you want to be associated with a house but not have a dragon mark, you can do so. And then we get to the big tamale, the Artificer, in its final form.
So, if any of you are new listeners, and I don't know why you would be, I'm kidding, actually. A lot of you are new listeners, so welcome. Matt and I are mega Artificer nerds. We're real Artificer heads. And as you probably know, we designed our own pretty thorough Artificer variant set of rules, which was immediately...
And supplements, right?
Supplements. immediately invalidated by a brand new Artificer supplement.
But now it's in its final form, so we can finally go back and revise it.
So we'll make some changes to that.
So they actually took a lot of our advice, right? And this is pretty similar to the second edition released in the Unearthed Arcana. They moved down spell storing item to a lower level. There are 3 subclasses: the Artillerist, the Alchemist, and the Battlesmith, which is almost exactly the same as the Warsmith.
Almost exactly the same. It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine, yeah. Great minds, I say.
So this is mostly the same. We don't need to go over everything in the Artificer, but I don't know. Anything we want to highlight, Matt?
I just wanted to highlight the art, which looks super cool.
I love the fucking Steel Defender. I love.
He's a big droopy dog.
He's a big droopy metal dog. I love him so much.
There's also a picture of an artillerist shifter artificer that has a bandolier of wands and like kind of a cowboy hat, and
which is so cool.
I want to play her.
And I hate to like keep coming back to this, but like the artillerist as designed doesn't do what I want it to do. I want it to be a wand slinger, and it's not. Anyway, I'm so. Yeah.
I already have some notes, Rob, for variant artillerist features, one being the wand slinger, one being the siege staff wielder, that we can add and fix this up. So look for the advanced artificer 2.0 to fix some of these things.
Yeah, look out for that. So we can cut this if I'm wrong, but is Arcane Firearm new, or was that that's their 5th level, the artillerist's 5th level ability? It just means that you can add a little extra damage when you cast an artificer spell through the firearm or wand.
Yeah, it is. I believe that is new.
I like that. So this I think is sort of like the idea that I had in mind that I didn't quite get right for our ranged. What do we call it? I already forgot.
Remember, the artillerist was already there. We were just adding variant features.
Oh, right. Sorry. This is one that didn't make the final cut. Never mind. I had ideas for like a wand slinger that we couldn't quite get right. But this idea I like. I hate that you've got to have a summon turret. We're going to rework this so that you can just have a bunch of wands, because that's cool. That's so fucking cool. It's so fucking cool. I'm sorry. I love the artillerist with the bandolier of wands. What a great idea. Yeah.
The one thing that did get cut from the most recent Unearthed Arcana was the subclass called the Archivist, which was kind of your thinking person's artificer. That did not make it in here. And that one was a new one they tried that, as we mentioned on our review of this Unearthed Arcana, was a little wonky. So it did not make it in there, but good for us because we have a very similar subclass called the Atavist. What did we end up calling it?
We ended up calling it the Arcanist.
The Arcanist, sorry. Yes.
And I'm very proud of the Arcanist. We worked really hard on it, so I'm glad that they cut it, because now you can
that
use
means
ours.
We can revise our version and put it in there.
So I still think they are a little light on infusions.
Yeah.
However,
yes,
there are more. There are more, and they are better. But it just still feels like there should be maybe a lot more, probably. I also think they added, I have not gone back and compared, but, well, no, that's not true. They have added some things to the replicate magic item list, because some of them are from Eberron. So that's good, because that was always a little brief. But the Artificer's a lot more thorough and a lot more complete of a class. And for that, I am happy. It is still, in my opinion, a little weird and imperfect, but all in all, good job.
Yes,
Wizards.
We have a new class. Officially, finally. Okay, before we move past the character creation chapter, I wanted to talk about this idea of group patrons, which is, you can kind of think of it as a background for your party, but it's more than that. It could be, if you wanted the thing that drives your entire campaign and adventure.
Yeah, I love this idea, to be honest. I don't think... So this is like a lot of newer ideas in 5th edition, in that it's not explicitly necessary. You could do this yourself, but I guess it's a little bit like factions in my mind, in that it adds a dimension that is very useful. And I'm a big fan. It's just sort of an idea of, this is who you're working for, and they can either be very involved or or not very involved in your campaign, but it just sort of gives your players a touch point, and it also helps them sort of like put a party together, right?
Right.
There are examples of
it
like...
gives you roles for within the group, right? This person's the lead, this person's the face, etc., etc.
So I would present this to your players, and they might like it or they might not, but generally I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a good, especially for Eberron, which is driven so much by subterfuge and, you know, behind the scenes machinations. I think this is a great idea. And a lot of the examples, what's really cool about this is that there's really good examples that at the same time build out elements of Eberron that weren't well described in the past. So that makes this one of my favorite sections, to be honest, just on top of the idea itself.
Two things. One, if you're not even running an Eberron campaign, some of these, like a patron that's a crime syndicate or a head of state, are generic enough that you could use them in any campaign. And two, I would actually be really kind of against these had they not presented the idea of how you want to present the group patron. Is it a highly directive one? Is it someone who just supports you and lets you do whatever you want? Or is it player directed? Is the patron, in fact, the sort of collective will of the party? Like, are you, you all work for a sketchy university that is basically a bunch of grave robbers, but you guys are, your party is the people in charge. One of the characters in the campaign is the dean, and they get some small amount of funding from the university, and they get to decide what to do with it.
Another great one is like an inquisitive agency, like you're all members of a bit like, I don't know, the Dresden Files or the TV show Angel, right? You run your own investigative agency, and here's sort of like the framework for that. Or a newspaper is a really good one. I'm a big fan of this this was a big part of my history studies. So the fact that newspapers and broadsheets take up a big part of Eberron, there's all these great sidebars.
Oh yeah, these are amazing.
This is actually my maybe favorite part of the whole book, but there's these just like little like snippets of articles from like the Voice of Breland or the Korenberg Chronicle, you know.
The Sharn Inquisitive, savagery in style at the Tain Gala.
It's so good. I'm a huge fan of this. But
so if you as a dungeon master, if one of your favorite parts of running 5th edition have been, for example, the interactions between a warlock character and their, powerful patron, right? This is like a great way to take that dynamic, but include everyone in the party, right? Mm-hmm. The one thing you want to avoid, at least in my opinion, I guess there's nothing wrong with running a campaign like this, is where the campaign is always, do this thing for our NPC group patron, and then once we've done it, the group patron tells us what to do next, right? You don't want to do that. But I think it gives you enough stuff to not do that.
And you don't want it to be like a series of fetch quests, right? But this gives you the framework that you need to do better than that, I guess, right? It allows you to have that sort of like basic overarching idea, but give it some meat and complexity. And also, this section is just great to read for getting ideas about Eberron. It's just by itself a really like wonderful lore section that thoroughly explores some people and organizations that you're not going to find information about in detail anywhere else. It's great. I'm a big fan.
Me too. Group patrons, big winner here.
Yep.
Should we move on to the Gazetteer? I just have a couple things I wanted to bring up about
it. I don't have much to say about the Gazetteer. I have not gone through it in like great detail, but from what I can tell, it is largely the same.
It is largely the same. There's nothing like big that's changed about the world. Yeah. If you are interested in getting into Eberron, the 3.5 edition campaign setting, which is available online and probably at 1 million used bookstores, has a much more detailed description of the various places. There's a bigger chunk of the book devoted to it. You'll get 2 paragraphs describing every major city. In this book, you won't get that. You'll get a paragraph or 2 describing the general feel of one of the regions of the world, but you'll also get a bunch more flavor about how to use that region in building a character or in building an adventure hook. Plus, you'll get, a bunch of, basically every region has a ready-made adventure kind of sketched out for you. Or two.
So this is great. It's just, in terms of actual detail, less than you would get from the 3.5 campaign thing. However, more useful in brief for both, for players, less useful for DMs, though it's generally made up for in other areas if you're a DM trying to build a campaign. Anything you want to talk about specifically?
As part of the Gazetteer, the book also takes the same treatment for the sort of faiths and some of the other power groups of Eberron, in that maybe there's not the most detailed description of them, but it goes straight to, this is how you can use the Traveler to build a character. This is how you can use the Undying Court to write an adventure hook.
There's a lot of charts in here. We haven't mentioned them, including ones that you can roll on to build character backgrounds or ideas. I don't know. How do you feel about those, Matt?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the charts. It's, they take up a lot of space, but they, I don't know. I think new players find them incredibly helpful.
So they're good. I just wanted to make sure we mentioned them because we've just kind of been not great, but good. Next section
is Sharn, City of Towers. Now, Rob, I would love to do a whole episode talking about Sharn one day in the future. This section kind of follows the same pattern as the Gazetteer. Less details, more stuff straight to plot or character hooks. The one thing I noticed that's different about Sharn in this book is it's got a little more of a Blade Runner feel.
I noticed that too, yeah. The opening art is this, very Magitech Blade Runner with, what appears to possibly be a billboard with a holographic magic dragon on it, and some, glowing sky skiffs, which I'm all about. I'm into it. As somebody who ran a 2.5 year campaign in Sharn, I'm a big fan of this because I know everything I need to know about Sharn. I have the Sharn City of Towers book. So they have sort of rewritten a bunch of this to just sort of have snappy hooks and ideas, which is super useful for me. I would also recommend though that you just pick up the Sharn City of Towers book for $2 next time you're at somebody's some sale at your friendly local gaming store, or just get it online. But if you don't have access to this, it's great. Sharn is a super cool setting, and we should probably talk about it in detail at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great introductory chapter. It's better than the one in the Wayfinder's Guide. And then it brings us to chapter 4, which is building Eberron adventures and sort of what makes an Eberron adventure unique and just a ton of ideas.
I'll be honest. I was mildly disappointed until I got to this section. This, to me, feels like the strongest of the entire book. It really does a bunch of the work. And this is just a really, really, really good tool for building a campaign, even if you aren't running it in Eberron. And it talks a lot about villains, which I liked because of the villain episode that we just did, and it goes through a lot of general themes and enemies and antagonists that you might have in your game.
Right. For example, if you wanted to build a campaign around the Dreaming Dark, evil organization of possessed people who want to control the dreamscape of Eberron, and also work for a giant psionic empire a continent away, it gives you a 3-page description of that organization, but really getting into their goals, motivations, and the way they operate. Plus, it's got some charts with some hooks, locations, and usually a fun map of a location. And you'll get that for every kind of organization and faction in Eberron.
So some of these... So I have not read everything that has ever been published about Eberron, but I have read most of it. And some of these were already pretty well established, but some of them are new and thorough. They have put a lot of effort into goblinoids and the fallen Dakani Empire, which is great stuff. The gatekeepers have a little bit of extra attention. Drome, Sorakel, The Aurum.
The Moorland gets, I think, the longest section, which
Yes,
it's not really a
yes.
faction, but a giant open world dungeon the players can explore. One of my favorite details here is a map of a Warforged Colossus.
Super cool.
Which is
Super
just
cool.
a giant robot your players can crawl around inside.
And these were referenced, I think, in brief, but they've given like a whole section to the Warforged Colossus. They've given the Moorland a bunch more to work with, which is good. It was left mysterious largely in the originals, but now it's, it's a good place to go adventuring, right? A good place to for your campaign to pop in and out of, and they've given you some really cool things to work with, including a great map of Warforged Colossus.
I think there's also some sections about, some other things that make Eberron unique, right? It's emphasis on travel and kind of going to exotic locations and then coming back really fast. It works really well. This is also the section that has a rip-roaring first-level adventure.
That's right. There's also, again, this was in the originals, but they've really... In the original Sharn City of Towers book, but they've really given a lot to work with for Boromar, Dask, and House Tarkanan and the Tyrants, the main criminal organizations. And this is all stuff that you could have figured out and sort of put together your own, but it just makes it...
They've done the work for you.
They've done the work for you. And here's what the thing is, that I did all this myself, and as I have mentioned, I'm a little cranky that now that I have wrapped my... very long Eberron campaign, they finally come out with a book that would have been very useful when I was just sort of inventing stuff about Boromar and Dask and House Tarkanan, but that's okay. This is really, really useful for... I strongly recommend that if you're going to run Eberron, you start in Sharn and then go from there, but it's giving you all the tools that you need to do that, and it's such a rich setting that really ideas and hooks and should just be coming to you, and your players can just sort of like seize on what's interesting to them and go for it. That's what's really like great and rich about Eberron.
You're exactly right. But I am going to ask you, Rob,
Sure.
to do me a favor and set your nerd bitterness aside.
I'm just like just the teensiest bit. It's just
You're
poor
lying.
timing.
If you set your bitterness aside, there's only 20% of Rob left. You're 80% bitterness. That's the 80-20 rule.
That's what people are talking about when they say 80-20.
Exactly. Rob's
how you live your life. You
bitterness
gotta be 80% bitter, 20% spite. Anyway,
what I would ask you to set it aside for is, I think, Rob, for all of our listeners, what is in chapter 4 of how an organization is described and the hooks that are kind of written, this should be your goal when writing about an unexplored region or a faction or a villain. When doing your own world building, is you should write out 2 pages that have these things, the organization's goals, motivation, and then a bunch of hooks.
this is, as it always is with everything Keith Baker related, the gold standard for world building. This is especially if you want to design your own criminal organization, you could do no worse than taking a look at any of these in section 4 and just making sure that you have as much detail in yours as they do here. It's pretty much perfect. It's great. And if you were going to borrow something, each of these could probably of the things in this book could be easily borrowed and reworked for your campaign somewhere else in a different city. You don't need any of the like Eberron trappings to take these really good ideas for crime families or crime organizations and use them somewhere else.
Or the Lords of Dust, which are the ultimate fiend schemers in the background.
Right.
The last 2 chapters of this book have a section on magic items and a section on some new monsters thrown in. None of them are new except for their stats in 5th edition, except for they've actually statted out some of Eberron's really big bads.
Yes.
Lady Illimaro, who we
Yes.
won't give away what or who she might be, but actually some of the overlords themselves and some of the I guess like archdukes of the Dalkir are statted out.
So this was my favorite thing. The Dalkir are some of the coolest foes and enemies, just creatures of madness from another plane that dwell in the shadows of Kyber, but they're not very well explained. And I actually really like that they have given so much attention to the Dalkir in this. There are 6 of them. They describe each of sort of their areas of interest, and then 2 of them have full stat blocks. And I think these are great villains. I think the Cults of the Dragon Below are great, just overarching campaign enemies. There's tons of like weird mooks and baddies and aberrations that you can throw at your players. I'm a big fan of this section. I normally am. Takes a lot. Listen, run a lot of bestiaries in my day, and it takes a lot to get me excited. But this I really liked, especially the big bads that they have
right
statted
having the stats for Sul Katesh is super interesting, right?
Yeah.
Before these kind of things were presented as so unattainable that maybe you wouldn't even stat them out. But I don't know. I like having the stats for the big bads. It lets you know
Me too.
where they can go. My one critique of the things in the monster section is the inspired or like challenges for like first level characters. And I always thought the inspired would basically end a party of anyone less than 5th level.
That seems weird to me too. When I ran my campaign, the inspired were 10th level threats or 10th. You see, they seemed. I mean, I guess I get what they're going for here, but from the way I understood it in the original, they were very, very powerful. But whatever.
Maybe I'm going to be generous here, and the stats they gave us are for like a 0 level inspired, and they'll all get more powerful than this.
Still, that's the only thing that was weird. They've got stats. Oh, Matt, they've got the stats for living spells, which I think is one of the more innovative things from Eberron. And this is something that you could absolutely borrow and make use of in any campaign. And it also gives you...
You plop one of these down in any wizard sanctum in any dungeon you have.
It also gives you the tools to make your own living spell, which is just super great. It's just awesome. These are super great enemies to plop down in any dungeon, any wizard tower, any, good stuff.
My only disappointing thing is like they're all attack spells. I would love to see the stats for like a living Tensor's floating disc, right?
Yeah,
it's just like it keeps picking things up and moving them around, and you're like, is this living spell our friend or
a living prestidigitation that just like keeps knocking the dirt off of your clothes and just making a bunch of noise?
Keeps making my food too spicy. We've got to destroy it.
It just keeps making my water all, sparkly. Enough prestidigitation spell. It's enough.
Rob, dwarfs think prestidigitation too spicy.
Too spicy. They also got new stats for the Lord of Blades, which I liked. They made him much more challenging. They gave him some artificer skills. Nothing you couldn't have done yourself, but this is good. I like this. This is a bestiary should give you enemies you can use, but also ideas to help you frame the world that you're playing in. And it helps you get a sense for like how powerful are the Lords of Dust and the Overlords, which I think this is the first time we've gotten like art and like real descriptions of the Overlords. And man.
Well, Rob, that's not true.
Is that not true?
Forgetting in Dragon Magazine number 303, there's actually a description of all the Lords of Dust.
Is that true? Is that actually
actually
Dragon
true?
Magazine
there was
number?
a weird Dragon Magazine. I probably got the number wrong, but I remember when I ran
Matt has
one shot on this. I had to look this up.
Won the nerd crown for this podcast. My mistake. Anyway,
my other favorite little detail is at the very end of the bestiary section. There's an art of a Kalashtar, and it says in the art Kalashtar or Changeling disguised as Kalashtar.
Very helpful, thank you.
Well, we're really killing 2 birds with 1 stone there.
There is some new art. A lot of the art is reused.
I would say the majority is reused, but the new art is great.
So this Warforged soldier looks fucking badass at the end. Did you see this guy with his arm blade and tabard? Oh, so cool. But yeah, a lot of the art, probably most of the art is reused, but there's enough new art, if that's like the thing that you're excited about, that it's worth picking up.
I mean, if you're new to Eberron, the art they reused is some of the best art. So
yeah, no, all the art is good. It's just some of it I have seen before, possibly several times.
Yes.
Okay, so we
Many
have made
times.
it to the end. Eberron Rising from the Last World. Let's have some final thoughts. Matt?
This is a book that I thought I had only dreamed of and would never come into reality. It's got some minor mistakes. For example, somewhere in the text it says that only members of dragon-marked houses that manifest a mark can put the D in front of their last names, as in Decaneth, and then in the adventure later on, it presents an unmarked heir and gives them the name Deorian. So there's like some minor editing errors everywhere. Sloppy. The firearms thing, can humans manifest the mark of Thrask or whatever? There's all kinds of editing errors. However, the focus on adventure hooks and plot hooks for both player characters and dungeon masters really makes this an incredible source book, even for, and this is a thing that I thought would be impossible, for people like Rob and I who know tons about Eberron because there's new plot ideas, and people who are new to the setting. So I think they've done an impossible task of pleasing both groups. Bravo.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to piss in our cereal, Matt. I'm going to have to yuck our yum at this moment, because...
Rob, shh. Let people enjoy things, which means you can't criticize stuff.
As I was reading this book, I loved it and I enjoyed it, but I realized as I got to the end that over half of it is all stuff I have seen before, and it has been rewritten and it has been polished and it has been improved. But at the end of the day, this is now the third or fourth or just the same revisiting of the same material that I have been playing with since the first book came out in 2001. And that's not really so much of a criticism, because this is more accessible to a new person interested in Eberron than the setting has ever been in the history of the game.
Yeah.
And I hope that thousands upon thousands of new players find this and are inspired to write their own and start their own Eberron campaign. But what it has made me realize, Matt, is that perhaps I have outgrown Eberron. Perhaps I have finally reached the point where there is no... The going back to this well is now going to become potentially limiting for me. And that's maybe like a personal Rob problem, but I felt like I would be remiss if I didn't mention the feeling that I had at the end of this book. But if you are not like me, if you have not invested so much of your life already in Eberron, if you have not read all of the source books already, then there is nothing wrong with this campaign. That it is a beautiful, wonderful, perfect book. And if you are new and at all interested in this, I strongly recommend that you pick it up, because there has never been a better time to launch an Eberron campaign. And for those of us who had to hack it together from unfinished UAs and old source books, bought from, yard sales, this is so much better, and there's so much to work with. And it's also just a great example of a really, pretty much perfect campaign book. And honestly, I wish they would do something like this for Forgotten Realms and all the others.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they don't. Well, I do know why they don't. But
this is a better version of the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide for Corvair and Eberron than the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide is for the Sword Coast and Faerun.
For me, this is a better starting point than a actual adventure book, right? I would much rather have this. I frankly would rather spend more money and buy 2 books and have one be like a thorough campaign guide and the other be, this is the adventure that you're running in that campaign world. So
now, I think Rob's criticism is incredibly valid, but looking towards the future, I know Keith Baker from his Twitter is working on a DMG Eberron book called Exploring Eberron that will add more detail of stuff that is previously never been published, like the plains and the underwater empires of Eberron. So that's kind of cool.
So this is perhaps the one thing that would affect my criticism, because what I guess my concern was that it felt like it was an endpoint. But if it's not, if they are going to let Keith do more, if they're going to let other writers write in the setting, because for all of its genericness, Faerun and Forgotten Realms feel like living settings, right? They change. They are we'll just call it Faerun, Forgotten Realms, it changes, right? There are new ideas. The shitty, not African continent gets rewritten to be less shitty and colonialist, right? You know, things change for better or worse. There are things like the spell plague and, you know, the time of troubles, you know, when you gotta shake everything up and change the setting. So if Eberron is given the opportunity to thrive, if they let Keith Baker and other writers produce content for it, then I will, that nothing would make me happier, because it is such an easy setting to write and create in, and it has been sitting unused, languishing in the Wizards' vault. So
yeah,
if that turns out to no longer be the case, then this marks a really exciting moment for me and, you know, the future of the game. But
here are my two hopes for the future. Is I hope this hardcover does well enough that Wizards is pushed to hire writers to publish a similar book for many of their other campaign settings and actually create something new. And I hope it does well enough that I think what would really be awesome is a hardcover adventure module set specifically in Eberron.
Right, which is I think would be a really, really, I think that would be the big test, and I think it would do very well. So I would love for there to be a full adventure module written by Keith Baker, or at least with his blessing, you know, set in Eberron. And that would be a first, right? For 5th edition anyway, because they haven't done that for any setting but Forgotten Realms. So cross your fingers, yell at Wizards Online. Don't yell at them. Write them nice letters to say that you like it a lot.
Yeah.
Anything else that we want to say about this? We'll be revisiting the Artificer, the Advanced Artificer, and we'll be creating Advanced Artificer 2.0.
Upgrade edition.
Ooh, I like that, actually. Artificer Upgrade. Ooh, wait, let's go with that. Yeah.
All right, play that Beyonce song.
And I also have a one-shot that is basically written.
Oh, yeah,
takes place in
good.
Sharn. I actually shelved it because of weird licensing around Eberron, but now that Eberron is official, there's no longer any of that weird licensing, so I'll finish that. I know we've made a lot of promises. We are going to keep our promises. Don't remind us about the times we didn't keep our promises, because...
Right. If you have any suggestions for what you'd like to see in an Artificer upgrade, though, let us know.
Let us know. We always want to do more homebrew, but the homebrew that we are most likely to actually finish in the near future is our Eberron-related stuff. So if you have ideas or thoughts or criticisms, let us know, and we'll post some links. As always, if you have other things that you want us to read or look into or talk about, write us at dmofnone@gmail.com. Add us on Twitter at dmofnone. Matt, what's that telephone number?
774-203-4629, the Dungeon Master Hotline.
Give us a call. We'll play your beautiful voice on the air. And as always, thanks for listening, and keep rolling them dice.